Good evening. Welcome to our second debate. Tonight we have candidates for the New London Board of Education. My name is Jean Jordan. I'm president of the New London NAACP, and we welcome you tonight. As I've said in the past, the most important job in the city belongs to those who work with our children. Even though the Board of Education is considered a line item on our city council, we know that you have the most important job in the city. What you do will affect the lives of our children for many years to come. So we thank you, first of all, for stepping up and volunteering, because this is a volunteer position, it is not a paid position, and it is a lot of work. So again, we thank you all for stepping up and volunteering to take on this role. I would like to introduce you to Barbara Brockhurst of the League of Women Voters.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This forum is also co-sponsored by the Centro-NAACP, but I don't believe anyone from Centro was able to come tonight. I'd just like to welcome you all and thank you so much for thinking about the candidates and voting. It's a critical job. This is democracy. This is real democracy, and it's hard work. And I just want to thank you all very much. So we're going to begin our debate, and I would like to introduce our moderator, Judy Dolphin of Gales Ferry. She doesn't have any power at home, so she came anyway. But she's just a wonderful moderator. A lot more calm on her feet than I tend to be. So let's welcome the moderator, Judy.
Thank you, Barbara. I think she put me on the spot here, is what I think. And yes, there is no power in Gales Ferry, that you're a bunch of Groton, much of Mystic, and other parts of the country. So you are very blessed here in New London to actually have power. I also want to echo the words of Ms. Jordan with regard to the responsibility that you folks who are candidates are endeavoring to take upon yourself. There is no government closer to people or more important than local school boards. And I speak from experience because I also served on a school board. I know how hard it is. I know how difficult it is to make those decisions, particularly when it comes to money, and things aren't getting any easier. We also know those children are our most important assets in this country. So with that, let me explain to you how things are going to happen tonight. We have many candidates, and I do apologize to them for standing behind them, but this is the configuration that's supported by technology, so we'll make that work. Each candidate, well, the candidates, because we have so many, are in groups of 4 and one group of 3. Within each group, they represent different parties. The candidates will have an opportunity to answer questions from the audience, which have been submitted via cards. And should you have another desire for writing a question, please just raise your hand and someone will bring you a card and you can bring it up to Barbara, who's sorting them. We try to pose all of the questions from residents, but we also know that some questions are duplicative. So Barbara's trying to blend the questions so that they're fair and complete and give the opportunity to our candidates to answer them. So the way this is going to work, group 1 is at the far side. From me, Eric, you want to raise your hand at the beginning of group 1? And then group 2 starts with Myrna, and group 3 starts with Group 3 starts with Alicia, and group 4 starts with Susan. So as we go through, we'll pose the question to group 1, and the order will be 1, 2, 3, 4 as they sit. And they will be watching the timers who are sitting in front of them. Timers, would you raise your hand? They will let you know when you have 15 seconds remaining, and then they will hold up a stop sign to ask you to please stop. You certainly may finish your sentence, but I won't let you go any further than that sentence. And then we're going to try to mix it up a little bit. So we'll just all play it loose and easy here. I know that you'll all do a great job. And I think I should first introduce you to each of the candidates. At the far side of the room on my left is Eric Carrion. Eric is a Green Party clerk. And that's where we have to stop. We're not going to waste time with applause or comments. We're going to applaud everybody at the end. Thank you. Eric is the Green Party. Jason Catalog is seated next to him. He's a Democrat and he's an incumbent on the school board. Eleanor Day is not here tonight. She is a Republican. And Rebecca Amati is a Democrat. It's interesting. This is the first time in New London I've moderated a lot of debates. It's the first time I've only seen 2 seated school board candidates who are running for office. Everybody else is a newbie, and I congratulate you all. Group 2, Myrna Martinez, is the Green Party and is the other incumbent who's here. Michael McLaughlin is a Democrat. Karen Paul is a Republican. Antonella Mascarella, is that close?
Very good.
Is a Republican. Group 3, Alicia Blake is a Working Families Party. Regina Mosley is a Democrat. Kathy Scrabbits, is that close enough, Kathy?
Close enough, yep.
Why don't you say it for us so as to get it right?
Scrabach.
Thank you. And Manny Rivera is a Democrat. The last group, Susan Tierney, a Republican. Jeffrey Hart, a Democrat. And Jasmine Collins, a Republican. So with that, we will take the first question. We'll be starting with group 1 with Eric. What will you do to make all
Oops.
Somebody else? I don't want to waste time. Okay. What will you do to make all schools as awesome as my school, the Jennings School? And I believe we must have a young person who wrote that. Eric, what would you do to make all the schools as awesome as her school?
I will ask questions to the students that go to Jennings and ask what makes Jennings an awesome school in our district, and try to implement the teachers that are teaching at Jennings. Actually talk to the teachers that talk at Benny Dover, Nathan Hale, New London High School, Science and Tech, and actually share their best practices with other teachers and create teacher forums will make a great idea for our community, so students can not only share their best practices but their ideas on how to create great opportunities for the students that go to our schools, and actually listen to their students. And everybody have fun in our schools, because if a school is awesome, that means that the students are actually enjoying the educational experiences that the teachers are providing to them. So in that way, all of schools can be awesome and amazing experience for our students at the same time that they're learning and bringing their experiences home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I forgot to mention something, that after the first group speaks, if anyone else in another group wants to answer the same question or rebut something that's been said, they get 30 seconds to do that. However, they only get an accumulated 3 rebuttals in the evening, so you might want to be careful about when you want to rebut. I wanted to do that before Jason gets started. Jason, the same question, please.
I think that Jennings School, I visited Jennings School a months ago, and I think what we need to do is look at where we're cutting and where we're making cuts, and look at how our district is implementing programs into different schools so that we have schools like Jennings, one of our largest populated schools. I think that we need to make sure that we have programs in place that are addressing all of our students' needs. And Jennings School is unique in that it's right now currently almost all New London resident students attending that school. So I think that we need to treasure that and work at how we can implement. I walked through Jennings School, as I had mentioned, as on my visit, and the students and the principal have this great camaraderie together, and I think that we need to see that in all of our schools.
And Rebecca.
First of all, I'm thrilled to hear a student put a question in the format making all schools as great as my school. I think in this country, every student that goes to school and comes home each day should feel as though their school is the greatest school. I think there are lots of components that are necessary to make a school awesome, effective. I think it starts with leadership. I think you need a building leader that's an instructional leader who can be a coach to the teachers. The teachers are at the heart of what happens in that building. The teachers, in order for a school to be an awesome school, they have to be hiring the most energetic, efficient teachers that have a great training behind them. And I think there has to be an atmosphere that's comfortable and safe for all students and welcoming to the parents.
Thank you very much. I believe we have someone who wants to add. Are you from Susan? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm behind you. I can't see your name next.
Sorry. I just want to say that our sons go to Nathan Hale, and I believe that we have an awesome school too. So that means we have 2 awesome schools.
Very good. Is there anyone else? Then let us move to group 2, starting with Myrna. And your question is a little more challenging to respond to, I believe. How is white privilege a barrier to serving the New London Public Schools' largely Black and Latino student body?
Yeah, thanks for the tough one. I think I know who it is. Thanks everyone for being here. Well, I think the way that, how is it a barrier? Well, the term refers to having experiences that allow you to have a step forward in life because of not having the biases that many people of color do walk through life through. So I think one really important place is, and we talk a lot about, gosh, that's quick, about needing to have a teacher population that reflects the student body. And I think we say that without speaking of the tough part, which is the white privilege, which is and so my time is up already, but that's how it's a barrier when the teachers don't experience what their students go through.
And I would like to say that if you run out of time on your particular question and it's something that you really want to say,
Right.
squeeze it into your end remarks.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Michael.
Well, it's probably the most difficult question you can ask. Because is it somebody's preconception, or is it actually true? To the people who say it, I'm sure it's true. To the people who try to avoid it, the people who try to work with it, the people who work with it every day, the teachers, administrators, maybe it's not as pressing as we think it is. But one thing everybody can do is listen, because if somebody has a complaint, we all should listen. Administrators should listen, teachers should listen, students should listen. And one of the things that's very simple in life, I haven't got to 15 years, so I'm fine, is often where people are really challenged, along with their race, is their economic situation. That can cause them just as many problems as anything else. And I guess the way you can say it is if people like this or like that, one of the things we always go by is you gotta listen, and respect is earned, not given.
Thank you. Karen?
Okay, that is a tough one. But we've been asked before. And one of the things that I said when I was asked before was to look into recruiting teachers from some of the southern universities, seeing if we could get them to come here and help in our teaching situation, that they would be able to relate to some of these students better than a teacher that's not of the colored persuasion. I think that the students, I agree with Mr. McLaughlin, the students need to listen, the teachers need to listen, and most of all, the administrators need to listen, because our children are the important ones.
Antonella?
Could you repeat the question?
I would. How is white privilege a barrier to serving New London Public Schools, largely Black and Latino student body?
I guess I never saw it as a barrier. I see New London as a lot of different races and nationalities, and in the public schools you have teachers and paraprofessionals that are all different races. And if the children, I guess if they run into a challenge or need someone that's more like themselves, then I say we just listen more to the kids and see what they need. I've seen so many teachers that are just very caring, and so many people in the educational system that, I don't know, I guess I just have not encountered that or can't understand.
Manny?
I just want to say that where white privilege can be a tremendous barrier is when it causes people both in the system and outside the system to have lower standards for our students. And that's when it gets really dangerous. You got to make sure that our kids get the right curriculum, the right kinds of facilities, the right kinds of tools, the right kinds of services and supports that kids across the state and elsewhere would receive.
Thank you. Jasmine?
As far as white privilege goes, I think the trouble that we run into is that we don't admit that it exists. So in order to understand that there's a problem, first and foremost, we have to have that open dialogue and admit, yeah, you know what, there are some discrepancies here. There are things that, there are kids that are not treated fairly, they're not treated equally because this exists. And until we really deal with the white privilege existing, we're going to continue to have these problems because the people are not being trained properly.
And Kathy, did you bring it up? No. Next to you. Regina.
I just want to echo Jasmine. She's right. If we don't admit there's a problem, there'll never be a conversation about the problem. And everyone here is talking about the students, but we have to look at the fact that we're not able to retain teachers of color, which may be part of the problem as well. So that white privilege is a barrier in keeping the teachers of color who are here, who also don't feel welcome.
Alicia, did you have your hand up?
I want to touch on what Myrna said a little bit about, and everyone else really, about having teachers of color and teachers that reflect the student body that they serve. And one of the initiatives that I've been doing most of my research on during the last 4 months of campaigning has been an American Federation of Teachers initiative by the name of From My Colleague to My Classroom, From My Classroom to My Colleague, and it's initiatives that work to close that diversity gap between teachers and the communities that they serve, and there are ways of doing that.
Thank you. Eric?
White privilege is a thing that not only exists in our educational system, but in our society in general. And what a better way to tackle it through an ethnic curriculum in our public schools where everybody learns about their culture and everybody is a culturally competent and learns in a culturally competent environment as our classroom, so we can be a clear example of how to teach in a cultural way to our students who come from different backgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to respond to that?
I will again. Can I have a question before I even start? I just have a procedural question. Do you start just watching you guys as they're speaking? Do you start timing only when they start speaking? Okay, so it's better to take a pause. Okay, thank you.
Is that your rebuttal, Myrna?
Rebuttal, that's a point of order, that's what it was. So, I think something that came to light here is that when we're talking about an achievement gap, that it's important that we use the term opportunity gap, because white privilege is going to, when we're cognizant of that term, we're understanding that not everyone has that step forward. And so therefore, if we're recognizing the system of the opportunities that students have, that some students have, that other students do not have to move forward, and we start evening that playing field, it's a way of closing that achievement gap, and it is now an opportunity gap.
Look,
She said that I can finish the question, and my sentence.
you're done.
I think that's for the moderator to state.
Excuse me, I'm the ringmaster in this circus, thank you. She was finishing her sentence. Jason, did you have a
Thank you.
comment you wanted to
I
make?
do, and you know what I want to say? Is that how dare London public schools have this question even come up of white privilege? You know, how we should have policy in place. How are we not addressing all of, we implement policy. We don't train our people. Transgender policy has been in place, and we don't train our staff. We have the policy that Myrna put in place, the economic, the differential policy of how people come to school in our different backgrounds. How dare we stand here and not be able to address and have this question even come up?
Thank you, and I think we understand that we let people finish their sentences. I appreciate that. If there are no other rebuttals to this particular question, I don't want to cut anyone off. Then here's another hard one. And this is for group 3, and we'll begin with Alicia. Is that right?
Yes.
Or did I get screwed up?
No.
Okay, all right. It's been known to happen. If and when the middle school and the high school merge, how do you plan to keep the young children safe and protected from the older children? Alicia?
We've been getting this question a lot with the completion of the magnet pathways in the 6 through 12 classrooms. And I'll be honest, aside from having more staff in the classrooms and aides on the buses to be able to oversee things like this, there's no way to really guarantee that there's not going to be any issues. So being able to pay attention, that is something that I specifically speak to with funding, being able to find ways to consolidate other departments, like the IT department, different departments that we've been looking into doing that, finance department, to be able to find these cuts so that we're able to fund positions for people to be more present with our students when issues like this arise.
Thank you. Regina?
Okay, so I think the first thing we have to look at is before construction begins, the plans and how this school is going to be built as far as keeping the grade level separate. It's got to start from the ground up with construction, and then, like Alicia said, hiring more staff to make sure that those children stay separate from one another. If we can have a security officer in the school that's unarmed, that's another way that we can go. I don't believe anyone should be in the school with any kind of loaded weapon or taser or anything that's going to accidentally endanger our children. But I think those are some of the ways that we can remedy that situation.
Thank you. And Kathy?
I think making sure that there are parents and teachers involved in the construction project is very, very important. I do go to the Building and Maintenance Committee meetings, and I've been on them in the past when they were building Nathan Hale as well as the other projects, and I think it is really important that we get the teacher input. Supposedly there's other schools in Hartford that have figured out a way to separate those different pathways from the older and younger students, but it is a concern of many of the parents that I've talked to. I think there are some things you can do with curriculum and scheduling, but we have to be really vigilant and really make this a priority. I think sometimes we cut funding and then we have to shove everybody in a certain space, and I'm concerned that that could happen with this situation as well. So again, really having us be super vigilant and paying attention to what the curriculum is. And I guess I'm going to stop because I know it says 15, but thank you.
And Manny, the same question, please.
The facility, as it has been configured and organized, would actually have a separate area for middle school students and a separate facility location, if you will, for your 9 through 12 students. So that has actually been addressed in meetings with architects as we've gone out and visited schools when I was formerly superintendent. But I will also speak to some of the advantages of a 6 to 12 program. They can be really positive for there's so many 8th graders who become 9th graders who aren't ready for that. Having a more seamless transition from 8 to 9 can be a very positive experience. Opportunities for 9 through 12 students to serve as mentors and role models for some of the younger people can also make a huge difference. So I think when we wrestle with that question, we have to look at both the positive as well as and address the concerns when they come up around, or legitimate concerns around safety and security of all of our kids.
Thank you very much. Eric, you have your hand up for a rebuttal?
Yep. In Puerto Rico specifically, we have schools that work at interlocking, and it's a way to save money, not only on transportation. So school will work for the middle school from 7:20 to 1:15 in the afternoon, and they drop off the student at the same time that they're dropping off the elementary school students or the middle school students. They're picking up the high school students who are taking classes in the afternoon. So we save money on transportation, and we don't have both schools at the same time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to this question? All right, that being completed, we'll move on to Group 4. The question for you, Group 4, is do you believe the central office is overstaffed and overpaid? You know, I've been in a lot of school board forums. This question is always asked. And with that, Susan, it's yours.
So central office has been coming up a lot. Before we get into overstaffed and overpaid, I think it's more important to look at efficiencies that can be made in the system. Are we doing everything in our power to make the system work for itself? I know it's not easy just to say cut jobs right off the bat, but I think if we take a deeper look into who's doing what job and is there something we can put in place that will save money as far as the whole system as a whole goes? Are things outdated, or is technology up to speed with what we're trying to do for all these magnet schools and pathways? I think we need to look at the systems more than the actual people.
Thank you, Susan. Jeff, what do you think about this one?
We do get that one a lot. Well, as far as overpaid, I have to admit that most of those people in the office make a lot more than I do. So I have some sympathy that if we're looking to save, it's easier to not raise salaries there. I would hate to do that to teachers and paras and people that directly impact the class size and the learning experience of students. That being said, I don't feel like there's a lot of useless positions there. I know that talking point is brought out a lot. So the responsible way to make cuts, the responsible way to continue to provide the best service while, doing the best with the resources we have might be to cooperate with the surrounding towns, with our regional neighbors. I think we could look for ways to consolidate a position between districts and having an all-magnet district, and we'll make New London well situated to do that. We're already a regional leader in education. People are starting to send their kids here, and they're voting to close schools in other towns.
Thank you. And the same question for Jasmine.
As far as overpaid, I don't know what someone's job description is worth. The problem, I feel, lies in you just have an overabundance of certain positions, and I'm not talking about teachers or the paraprofessionals, I'm talking about the people who work directly in the central office. Do we need so many secretaries? Do we have enough of someone and those jobs can be combined? We really need to take a look at the job descriptions, looking at the salaries, and possibly making some changes. Those changes, unfortunately, may lead to a job loss, but that money is going to go back to the schools with the teachers and the students who deserve that money. As far as overstaffed, once again, it comes from numbers, it comes from information, and that information needs to be readily available. We need to be transparent in order to answer that question. And that means you need to give us the numbers so that we can look at them, so that we can compare things. There's way too many veils, I feel like, or closed doors when we go to open them to get that information.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? I just want to let you know that, Eric, you have used 2 of your 3 rebuttals, and those of you who've already done one, remember that you did it. So I think, Jason, your hand first.
So I think that's a great question, and I think Jasmine kind of really hit it right on the nose about getting that information. We have people in our central office who are what we call special assignment principals. People who were principals in buildings and for some reason are now back in our central office. I think we may have 2 to possibly 3 of those people making $150,000 a year as special assignment. And when you ask for that job description, you can't get it. I think that it's important to know that we do have those positions in our district and that we need to look at what's really going on with these individuals. We recently appointed a 4th administrator at the middle school. I don't know that we need 4 administrators. We have about 500 people at the middle school students, and I feel like that, one of the first things that I will do if re-elected is to restructure central office and look at this special assignment principal positions that we have in place.
Thank you. Manny, I think I saw your hand.
Sure, I'll be brief. Just one quick point. The majority of our budget is in the schools. 2 weeks ago, I did not agree to the conducting of an audit. However, I think in this particular case, I would support an audit, an efficiency audit, and looking at central office, looking at positions, because all I hear is everybody has all these different numbers about this and that and a different opinion. It's every year after every year in most communities, not just New London. And I think the only way to set the record straight is for an outside third-party independent audit, such as what I did when I was formerly superintendent, when I hired Price Waterhouse and came into my district and cut $2 million. So I think...
Thank you, Manny. That's the end of your sentence. Kathy, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, just quickly, I think we have to look at the grant positions and really be vigilant, again, I said vigilant, about how long the grant is and how are we going to fund that position once the grant is no longer available. I think we need to pay attention to that.
And I saw Karen's hand.
Yes, thank you. Well, as most of you know, I raised this topic at the last debate. And coincidentally, the very next working day, we did get the job descriptions. And guess what, folks? At least 2 of those job descriptions are almost word for word the same. And these were directors. So I really think it needs to be looked into. Thank you.
And Rebecca, I think you had your hand up.
This is a topic that you can go to any town, USA, and you'll hear similar levels of intensity about the issue. I do think as a community, we have a civic responsibility to be fiscally responsible and take a look at it, be transparent about it. And I want to make one other point. You want a top-notch school district, you need to have competitive salaries in those top positions, or you're not going to get top-notch candidates, and our kids deserve nothing less than the best.
Are there any other comments on this question? Now I've lost track. Am I back to group one?
Yes.
Excellent. And this time we're going to start, this is where it gets dicey. We're going to start with Jason, who's number 2, and then Eric will be number 4. Okay?
3.
All right. What can a recently retired superintendent bring to his city school board? Are there dangers to him assuming this new role? So, Jason.
I think a recently retired superintendent who has served out his extension and contract can bring a lot to the district. Someone who has bailed on the district after giving a 3-year extension, I think comes in with a different perspective. I think of the people sitting around this table, we have a lot of qualified candidates, and I would like to think that someone who is a former superintendent would bring a lot to the board. However, I do have some concerns about a candidate who the board, he came to the board, or whatever, the person came to the board and received this extension and then decided to bail. So it's kind of like that's a mixed question, and I just feel like that we needed someone with experience who cares for our district.
Thank you. Karen, same question. Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca. That's right, you looked at me, I thought, yeah, Rebecca. Thank you.
That is a very loaded question. As an educator, I have to answer it from this perspective. I feel as though any experience that you can bring in the educational field to a position like as a member of the Board of Education is valuable. That's why I'm running. I'm a former educator, I'm a retired educator. I have perspective that I think is valuable. I think if you have a person who's willing to put himself out there and be willing to take the hits that inevitably are going to be thrown, they must have a love for the community, and the potential of knowledge that exists there is very, very valuable and should be applauded.
Thank you. Eric.
I'm gonna abstain answering this question, just because I think it is kind of like not fair that we have not been asked about like our past position and what does it bring to the board. So just because of that way, I think it's kind of unfair that each of us kind of talk about our past experiences and what we're bringing to the board. I'm not gonna answer it directly. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment or respond to this question? Jasmine, what do you think?
I feel like when you make a commitment to something, you stick it out all the way. I understand that, personal issues, problems come up, but when you give your promise, especially when you sign a contract, you stick with that. So I have a difficult time knowing that someone decided that they wanted to leave for whatever reason, couldn't hold that position. There have been some questionable decisions made while they were acting in their superintendent position to come back now and serve as a member of the board. I personally have an issue with that.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to respond to that? Manny?
No, I just simply want to say, number one, I did not bail. I don't think there's a person in this room that hasn't at some point in their life had circumstances change that they did not anticipate. And so for me, what I had was a major changing event, which is why I made a decision to retire and devote time elsewhere. But that doesn't mean I don't still love this community. I'm from this community. I was born and raised in this community. I'm a 1970 graduate, a proud graduate of 1970 from New London High, and I still owe and want to deliver and give what I can back to my community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Manny, I have to let you know that you've used your 3 rebuttals. That Eric has 2, and Jason has 2, and Jasmine has 2. So each of you have only 1 other. So now we are at group 2. 2. We will start with Michael this time, and Myrna will be last place. The question for you, how do you plan to clearly explain the magnet school placement to New London parents?
Well, that's not really that difficult because, first thing, I'll use the microphone to do it.
Okay, counting starts now.
Okay. It's really not that difficult to do because they have so many advertisements. They have it on cable TV. They have everything the time of when you'd like to do it. Okay? And people have got to realize that this is a lottery. This is something that we want to do. We want to have everybody to have a chance to it. Now, can we make everybody happy? No. But are there other ways to do it? Many times, and I've seen this in any type of lottery we've ever been involved with, especially in colleges and things like that, if you want to go to this school and they say no, the day that school starts, there may be openings and we can rearrange some people like that. But the whole concept of the magnet school is to give a choice. And if you want to make a choice and you want to do something different, you have to be on top of the situation and be able to take care of benefit for you. You have to advocate for you. I hear too many people, well, my son can't go to this school or my daughter can't. Well, maybe you have to look at this and you have to be proactive. Well, I guess I have to stop there.
Could you push that back just a little bit? It's a little bit loud on that. That's all right. That's okay. Karen.
Oh, goodness gracious, can I skip this one? When I figure it out, I'll let you know. How's that?
Okay.
Because it's pretty confusing to me. I'm a neighborhood school girl, and I think that if people, it's fine to give people choices. My own children had choices where they went to school, but one of their first choices was their neighborhood school. So, you know, it's fine to go someplace else. It's wonderful. Everybody says something about my haircut. My haircut was done at El Grasso. Okay? Those kids over there are from other places. And that's where they chose to go. So I agree with having the option, but I also agree with the neighborhood school option. Thank you.
Antonella.
Well, right now we have it that you have to choose your child, you have to choose what school your child goes to from kindergarten. The only problem with that is how do I know if my child wants to be in the theater and art school? Maybe later on he would like to be in the science and technology school. I think that there needs to be a better way for our kids. If we sign them up in one school, there should be an easier way to have them go to another school. And the lottery right now it doesn't seem like a genuine lottery for New London students.
And Myrna.
Choice is an interesting word because in the context of school choice, because it implies that we get to choose, that it's our personal decision. And it is our personal decision to decide which school we prefer to place our children in, or our children prefer to go to. But the reality is that there is a set number of seats in each school, and there are real confines to that. And so within this type of system that we have decided, we do have to live within the number of seats that exist there. It's what it is.
Thank you. Jeff, I think you had your hand up first.
It would be hard to explain it if there were, in its current format, because it is a little bit of a black box. But I think when people raise that issue, what they're talking about is not just neighborhood schools and giving more weight and preference to that. I think that there are good lottery systems out there that work, that take into considerations what the school is best suited to teach, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can find those systems like the New York Public School System uses and adapt them to our community. And then I could explain it because it would be a little more open.
Thank you. Michael.
Maybe I won't use the mic this time. But anyhow,
You're good. That's perfect.
that perfect? See, that's the first time you ever said that. Hope the voters know that. But anyhow, we talk about the magnet school. We talk about the lottery. We talk about this over and over and over, and we try to get the best thing we possibly can. I'm more concerned about the kids who live in New London, who don't go to New London schools, and why not? That's the first thing we ought to find out, why all of these people on Glenwood and all the other people get on a bus to go to someplace other than New London.
Okay, Susan.
I actually live on Glenwood, and we go to Maple Vale, so. But something that, while we're talking about choices and pathways, something that I heard just this week, speaking to some young high school students, is that they're feeling that there's differences or inequalities between the different pathways. The leftovers go to this group, the inequalities between this building that we're sitting in now and the New London High. We have to really work to fix those also.
Is there anyone else who would like to respond? Alicia.
I just want to make a comment about the lottery system and the reality of that in most other cities in the country. I have my best friend lives in Philadelphia. Her daughter would not have gone to school if she did not apply for her to go to school. That's not that out of the ordinary. And the money that is coming from the state for us to complete this magnet pathway is really important to New London, especially when we are lacking education funds in a lot of places.
Thank you. I think Kathy, you had your hand up too.
Yeah. I think too, Kate McCoy has a very amazing understanding of the magnet school plan, obviously, and the lottery, and she did a great talk at the Parent University to try to help parents understand how the lottery system works. So I think we do need to work harder. Yes, we want the parents to reach out, but we also need to extend and help them understand some of the confusing parts. And Schoolmint is way better than the program they had in the beginning to do the lottery program. And it was made by parents, I've been told. So.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I will.
I'm sorry?
I will.
Okay. That sounds good, Erna. This is your second rebuttal.
Voters chose the magnet school district. I wasn't even necessarily for it in the beginning. And the reality, again, is that what happens is that it's not fair. It feels that it's not fair when it is your student that doesn't get in. The New York City also, I mean, I'm from the New York City area. It is not a perfect system. And when it's your child that doesn't get into the school of their choice, then that's when it becomes a problem. And so that's what reality of what we're going to run into. The best would be if we had our neighborhood schools, and those worked great. But this is bringing benefits.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Whoops, I need a new question for you. Okay. This will start with group 3, and Regina will start, and Alicia will be the 4th person. What city committees have you been on that give you the experience needed to be on the Board of Education? So your city experience to validate your interest in this Board of Education service. And so we'll start with Regina.
Well, they're not necessarily appointed city committees, but they are community work. I've been on the advisory board for Hearing Youth Voices for several years. I worked very closely with the youth in that organization. I have been now a parent organizer with a grassroots organization called Step Up New London. I have been a part of the school discipline working group, which was appointed by a previous Board of Education. I was born and raised in this community. I'm vested in this community, and the work that I do, even if it doesn't have a name, is dedicated to the youth in this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Kathy?
Yeah, so not so much city appointed, but I have been to many meetings over the years. I've been involved with school governance councils. I was co-chair of the one at Benny Dover for a while. I was also involved with the one at the high school. I've been involved in PTOs for 13 years plus. I've been involved attending as a volunteer the school building and maintenance committee meetings since my oldest, who is now a freshman, was a 6th grader, so that's a bit of time. I've been on different hiring committees for teachers. I've been involved with the Parent Leadership Advisory Group that helped put together the Parent University. And I think that New London Parent Advocates. Thank you, Regina. I actually was involved in the very beginning about that. Regina was there too. So that was a big thing to try to help get more parents involved and to try to be a voice for some of the students and parents in the community. I'm also involved in SCAD. I'm a substance use counselor. I also work as a private therapist. I've worked at Safe Futures when it was Women's Center. I've worked at Child and Family Agency.
Thank you. And Manny, I think you're in that question pool as well.
Well, obviously, my former work as the school superintendent was really 24/7 with meetings and getting out into the community as much as I possibly could. I regret that I did not have the time. I joined 2 organizations and I haven't had time to be an active member, but I was very interested and joined the Kiwanis Club as well as the Boys and Girls Club, where I have really been inactive, but hopefully in the future I'll have more time for that.
Thank you very much. And Alicia.
Again, more community activist work than city-appointed governance. I've volunteered with the Boys and Girls Club. I've worked with the Thames Valley Council for Community Action here in the city as a community liaison to actually encourage businesses to comply with state policies. I've worked for the community hospital here, Lawrence Memorial Hospital, for over 13 years. I'm a small business owner. I work with children and families of the city, prenatally, postnatally, trained in identifying perinatal mood disorders, and I would say that most of my personal experience speaks more to being a board member. I have 2 children that are currently within the school system, a third on her way there. I'm a homeowner in the city, active community volunteer. So I find that those would be what qualify me the most for this.
Thank you very much. I think I saw Jeff's hand.
Well, I began serving the city on the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which I chair for the last 2 years, and it was the creation of Mayor Castro. We worked really closely with Councilor Marks over there, Martha, and we were the only advisory committee to push legislation through this last term, and I also used that committee as a platform to start a volunteer program that served over 70 households of disabled or elderly folks that needed to be shuffled out, because it was very important that we didn't just have a punitive approach, but also help people that needed help.
Are there any others? Eric, I think you, oh no, sorry. This is your last one?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's my last one, but I really think it's important. I have been part of New London Community and Campus Coalition, Students Against Destructive Decisions, New London Youth Affairs and Teens in Action, Hearing Youth Voices, where I have been in front of the board in the past before Myrna and Jason, when I was a youth myself, fighting for fair policies in our schools, Writers Block, Drop Learning Center, and the Latin Theater of New London, and all those organizations have brought me where I'm here today. And I know that youth in our schools can have the same experiences that I had, have fun and connect with the community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Michael?
I hope you give me about 10 minutes for this, but anyhow, I started as a volunteer for the Recreation Department when I was 14. I've worked for them ever since then, every different capacity I can. I'm involved with every scholarship committee there is. I give out scholarships on my own. But more important than that, each and every day, I help the youth of New London. I run the in-house suspension room for a neighboring school in another town. But more important than that, I also work with college students who don't know where to go, don't know what to do. For athletes, we help them go on and defend themselves. What we do is we help kids. Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, you made your point, and it's a good one. It's an important one. Anyone else want to respond to this question? Well, then we'll move on to this question. And this is for group 4. And Jeffrey starts, followed by Jasmine and then Susan. What is your plan to end our school-to-prison pipeline?
Well, the biggest change that we're in the middle of making is the restorative practices, which Myrna was instrumental in getting through as a policy. It's a pilot program now, and seeing that through to a full implementation is going to take a long time. Training people is going to be a cultural change. It may take, even an entire generation, quite frankly. But as we consider the next superintendent, picking someone who's really committed to restorative practices is going to be essential. So that's going to try to move us forward in the direction we want to go.
And Jasmine?
As an employee of the Department of Children and Families, I can tell you this is something that I'm very passionate about. I see the destruction that happens in homes, and that's essentially where it's going to come from. The school has got to do a better job with advocating with the parents, figuring out what's going on in the households. Otherwise, it's just very cyclical and it's not going to fix itself. Restorative practices are wonderful, but that takes a team of people to recognize those issues, and it has to start at home. There needs to be some more done. I don't know, policies, training, things need to be done more for the families of New London in order for this pipeline to be shut down. And that needs to come from the schools. If the school is recognizing that there's an issue with a child, we need to stop those punitive punishments unless they are absolutely warranted. And that comes with some issue because we need to figure out and have that dialogue. Thank you.
Jasmine. And Susan?
I know there's a lot of people on the panel right here that have much more experience talking about this than I do, but I would say one thing that's important to me is starting with the younger kids, and I'm really a fan of the rec department coming into the schools for after-school programs, and also our school last year did like a essentials program to keep the kids after school, to keep them involved in what they liked.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. Others who might want to respond? And Antonella?
Susan's right. I think it needs to start with younger kids. We need to start as early as kindergarten. If we're going to be using restorative practices, let's not wait a decade to have it go through all the schools. It needs to be from administrators all the way down. Everyone needs to be on board. We need to take care of these kids. If we need more psychologists and mental health specialists in the school to help, then that's what we need to do.
And Alicia, I think.
Most of us attended a forum for hearing youth voices a few days ago, and it was amazing. And I was interviewed by an 8th grade student that was so eloquent, and the students know what their needs are, and I think that we need to trust them more, and we don't give them the benefit of the doubt. And if I'm elected, I look forward to continuing to have forums like this, because our students want to speak to us, and we need to listen to what they're saying.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to respond?
I'm exhausted.
You have some. You'll have to build it all into your 90-minute or 90-second. All right, here's my predicament. It's, we have each of these wonderful people has 90 seconds, not 90 minutes, to summarize their reasons for wanting to be on the school board. We don't have time to have 4 more questions at 1 person a minute and still be finished by 7:30. So we need to honor them and allow them for their 90-second. And what I'd like to do is a little shake up here. What I'd like to do is ask each of them to speak their 90-second closing remarks, and then if there's anyone on the panel who would like a question asked, we'd give everybody a chance for 1 minute to respond to that question. So you might think right now, if you have a particular question, and the first hand I see is the person who will ask the question. You've not done this before, but this is maximum use of our time, I think. So with that, we started with Eric, and so we're going to close, starting at the end with Jasmine, and ask her to be first to give her summary.
First, I want to say thank you to every one of you in these seats. I appreciate seeing the faces. I appreciate seeing the community come out and support us. That's what we need, obviously. I'm doing this because as someone who was in the military, who came here, I'm not originally from here, but this is where I've chosen to have my family. I'm married to a New London native. I met him several years after I had gotten out on an honorable discharge to stay. I enjoyed serving my country, and I enjoy giving back to my community. It's something that is really important to me. Giving back to this community, there are certain things that we need to take back. We need to take back our finances on the board. We need to take back some of the decision-making abilities. And with that, I would strongly demand, if I get a seat on the board, that we have a forensic audit. That's extremely important to me so that we can maintain transparency and also streamline the administration, because all of our dollars need to be going for what is important, and that's our teachers and our students. Parental involvement is a huge issue for me. If there are behavioral issues, a lot of those issues come from home. We need to figure out what we're doing in New London to help get our kids and families on the right track. We also need to maintain our assets. New London, unfortunately, has a history of building and not repairing, and we really need to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Jeffrey.
Well, I want to begin by thanking everybody for taking the time to be here. And I am here to serve because I am a parent, and I have 2 small children and another one on the way, and we're going to send them all through the New London public system. But I want to use my time effectively, so I have to raise the issue of student transportation. And the company that is currently serving us, last time the transportation contract came up to bid, was the only bidder. And so I'm going to make sure that that's not, if I'm elected, I want to make sure that's not the case next time. I've had issues with them when they lost my son, not just once. And they've had such poor communications and so consistently tried to blame the schools that I quickly got a team together of the assistant principal and my family. We went down uninvited to the bus company and had a discussion. Now, not every parent has the time or the skill set to do that. But because I'm used to advocating, and I want to advocate not just for my kids, but for all of our kids. And I hope that you will elect me on November 7th and give me the chance to do that. That's what's most important to me, and I think it doesn't apply to just this one issue, but it applies across the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Susan.
Thank you. I think my strongest suit is remaining positive for New London. I'm really happy with Nathan Hale. I also have 3 young children, 2 are at Nathan Hale, one's in preschool. I look forward to serving on the board, using my business skill set to bring any efficiencies I can. I'm used to working with 30 to 50 employees, many whom are high school students, and part-time help that changes season by season. So I think I'm a pretty good team member, and I would be happy to work with anybody up here, whatever party or whatever. I honestly can say that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Manny.
Thank you. I'm just looking for the opportunity to serve and contribute what I know. My fundamental belief is when you have things that are working well, you build on those. If you have things that aren't working well, you fix them or you get rid of them. One thing we haven't talked about tonight in depth is the fact that we're really at a crossroads in terms of our finances. I doubt that the state's going to be contributing more money down the road, even though they should be. Locally, taxpayers are maxed. I'm really concerned about our model. I think we need to rethink what we're doing. I think it needs to be along the lines of not only building a culture of collaboration, but more personalized learning for students, and the community providing supports from dealing with social, emotional, and mental health supports to making sure that we have an endowment in place so our graduates can go to college tuition-free. There are people actually working on that right now, including myself. And these are the things that I would continue to want to work on as if elected.
Thank you very much. Kathy?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It really is a privilege. I think of how many meetings I've gone to and the thought that I could be on the other side of the table is kind of mind-blowing, so thank you. I have been to a lot of meetings. I think that is a strength I bring to the table. I have seen a lot of different boards of eds over the years, a lot of different superintendents. I've been in a lot of schools with a lot of different principals. I've talked to a lot of teachers, parents, and students, so I think I have a lot of different strengths that I can bring. I am definitely concerned about maintenance and how we fund that. I'm definitely concerned about making sure we pay attention to the magnet school plan. We need to make it work, and we also need to make sure that we're working with the kids that are going to school now. I do feel there are some discrepancies between the New London High School side and obviously the science and tech side. I'd like to see all students really be able to reach their potential and thrive. Benny Dover has had issues over the years. Our children have been at Benny Dover. I would like to see some more strength at Benny Dover, whether it's with bringing in more mentors and tutors or revamping some of the way the administration and deans and things are structured. I think helping teachers with having exit interviews and really finding out why teachers aren't staying, what can we do to retain teachers. I think accountability and transparency, we throw those words all around all the time, but I think we really do need to know. We need to see the job description, see what the jobs actually do. I think we need to be really digging down and researching. I like working with people, so I really do enjoy hearing what people have to say. So I'm looking forward to, however this ends out, I will still be going to the meeting, so thank you.
Thank you. And Regina.
All right, my name is Regina Mosley. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight. The main reason why I got involved was because I was concerned, a concerned parent. I have 3 girls, one who graduated from Scientech Magna High School, one who went through Benny Dover and had problems and is now at Grasso Tech, and one who is currently in Benny Dover, Jackson Middle School in the leadership pathway. There are things that I hear from my child that I wish I didn't hear. And sitting on the other side of this table as a parent who spoke during many public comments, along with Kathy, voiced those concerns. And those concerns weren't answered, they weren't met. And I feel like as a parent, I need to advocate not only for my child, but for all the children in the community. Because they're New London kids, I'm a New London parent, and I'm responsible for them. So I feel like if I'm elected, when I'm elected, because I have to speak it into the universe that it's going to happen, I can rewrite those policies and address those issues that weren't being addressed when my child, who's a sophomore in college now, was having those same issues. I feel really strongly about hiring and retaining teachers of color. We have to find out where the gap is in the retention with them and work to support those teachers a lot better than we already are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the bell has rung. Alicia.
I also want to thank the League of Women's Voters. You guys always do a really good job with our municipal elections here. Everyone for coming, because it shows that you're as invested in the city and as in our children as we are. I want to thank all of the candidates that are up here. I want to thank all of the current Board of Ed members and council people and mayors and people that are in the audience right now, because this is a really hard job. It's hard to represent the children of New London. It's a hard job. You're made a target, your family's made a target, and you really put yourself out there to volunteer your time to make something better, instead of just spending your time complaining about what's wrong and dragging people down and going to public comment to complain. and I might not always know all of the answers. In fact, I guarantee you that I won't, but I can promise you that I will always find them. And I will never be dishonest with you. And if you ask me something, I will speak honestly to it. Something that I tell my clients in my business, I will find the right answer for you. I have already spoken to my community involvement, so I won't repeat myself. But the reason I'm doing this is for my children, and I am so proud to see so many parents up here right now, because I feel like that is some representation that has been lacking in our school board over the years. Do I think that we should all be parents on the school board? No, we'd never get anything done, but.
Antonella.
Hi, I'm Antonella. Thank you for having me here tonight. I have worked in New London Public Schools, and I still continue to volunteer in New London Public Schools. I also didn't want to be one of those people who complained and was frustrated with how things were going. So I decided it's time to get involved, and time to be on the board if possible. I'm new to this town. I fell in love with this town. My husband is a native from New London, and I know that we all say we want to do what's right for the teachers and the students, and we do. Just volunteering in the schools, I see things that I just haven't been happy with. And I would love to make a change. I feel that it's going to be a great challenge being on the board of education. I feel like a lot of things need to get changed. We need to ask a lot more questions. We need to verify our answers not only from one source, but many sources, to make sure that we have the correct information. My platform is to address the behavioral issues in the classrooms, to increase parental involvement, and to have qualified paraprofessionals in each classroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Karen.
Yes, my name is Karen Paul, and I'm running for the Board of Ed. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum tonight. Thank all of you for coming. Thank Centro de la Comunidad and NAACP. Well, I don't think anybody's mentioned them, but they are a co-host. It's my understanding. Okay. I have been involved in city and state committees since I was the age of 12. In California, I was part of the recreation departments out there have elected officers. And from the city to the county to Southern California, Northern California. So I have attended many conferences on youth and family and adults. Having said that, fast forward, the last 25 years of my working life, I was a nanny living in fairly well-off homes. Having a lot of experience in many different school systems, the private schools, the parochial schools, the special education schools, and the public schools. I think I bring a lot of information and knowledge to the plate, and most of you know me, and I'm very involved in the city, and I jump in and stay, both feet first.
Thank you very much. Michael.
Yes, I want to thank especially the people who came out tonight. I mean, it's so heartening to see people come out to these things. As I see the mayor there, I think we should recommend a percentage of a discount on your taxes because your people are involved. You are here. I want to thank the moderator and especially the timers. You guys get all the heat there is. But then I talked about myself. I want, as I said last week, the last debate, I want efficiency in the schools. We've got to look, we've got to go, we've got to do these things. But what we have to have people do is stop complaining kids do this, and we have to motivate them to be the best they can be. I was a student in London schools. I got an opportunity to be the best I can be, and I can thank that school system forever and ever. Now, one thing I never talk about, because I talk about it all the time, is I've been the voice of high school sports in this area for 34 years. One of the candidates' husbands played, I did his games. And all we do is talk about how proud we are of the Northern kids, how wonderful they are in all parts of the state, in all parts of the country. We bring back New London. Because when I had the opportunity to teach ELT at Jennings, one of the things I did for them was, I'm from New London, I'm loud and I'm proud, and the kids would talk. We taught public speaking, it was wonderful. No one will outwork me, I promise you, and I will give you every minute that I have of every day, because this town is worth it. I'm from New London, I'm green, I'm gold.
Thank you. And you're loud and proud, I must say. It's very good. That's right. Very good.
I challenge you on the outworking, just so you know. Out of 7 Board of Ed members, 5 are not seeking re-election. I am one of the 2 incumbents. We also have only an interim superintendent, and we are going through a large transition into our magnet school district. And so what I bring to you is I have experience as a teacher in this district and many, about 20 years of educational experience, a community advocate, and now I have 4 years on the Board of Education as a Green with an all-Democratic elected body in the city, and a good record of moving things through despite my singularity in political party. Why am I running? Because I believe in an engaging school system for all children, that all children have the right to experience and develop their own, their thinking skills, their life skills, their creativity to make choices for their lives, and that's the real choice versus school choice is life choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Marina Martinez.
Rebecca.
Thank you. In 1974, I graduated from college, got married, and moved to New London, Connecticut, where I started my career in education. I taught English at New London High School, and it didn't take me long to fall in love with that school and this community. I loved the job, I loved the kids. I'm still great friends with many of the people that I worked with. I stayed in education for all of my professional life, recently retiring in 2014. And at my retirement party, my last line of my speech as I looked at all the people that I had worked with all those years was, remember, this is about the kids. It's the kids, it's the kids, it's the kids. And for me, it still is, to the point where upon retirement, I sort of went into withdrawal because there weren't any kids, it was just my husband and I. So I decided I had to do something. So I ran into Juan Roman, the newly hired football coach at New London High School at the time, and threw out an idea that I had thrown out many, many years ago, that athletes needed someone to work with them on their academics. So I volunteered to be the academic liaison at New London High School for the football team, which has brought me back to the kids. Well, it's not just the kids, it's the school, it's the teachers. I'm a great advocate for teachers. Having been an administrator, I'm a great advocate for the administrators. Somebody has to love what goes on in a school and the community, and I believe in the person that can do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jason.
My name is Jason Catala. I'm seeking a 7th term on the New London Board of Education. I think it's important. I want to thank everybody for putting on this forum. I noticed former board member Elizabeth Garcia Gonzalez is here in the back, and she is also one of the supporters of this debate from Centro-NAACP Comunidad. So I'm glad that she's here tonight. But I'm running again because there is just so much going on in this district. We need to hire a strong superintendent of schools, someone who's going to come in and work with our magnet district. I'm running because there has to be better transparency with our budget. We have to look at how we're spending our money. For too long, these last 2 years have been mind-boggling to me. I've served 12 years, 10 years before on this board, and I've just seen different things happening over these last 2 years. Things that have been kind of swept under the rug and that the Board of Ed is not being informed of. And I just think that we need to have a more grasp on things. improve transparency in every single department that we have in our district. We need to work with the new superintendent. We need to really look at our budget and look at what we're spending on consultants. I mean, what people don't realize is that we spend over $450,000 on consultants, and not to mention a $450,000 literacy program that we implemented with no board approval or discussion. So I look forward to your support.
Thank you very much. Eric.
Muy buenas noches a todos. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank, muchas gracias a LWV-CP, the League of Women Voters y al Centro de la Comunidad por tener este debate. I want to say that I'm honored to be sharing this political campaign with Mirna Martinez, who has a lot of experience and is one of the two incumbents looking for re-election. I also want to say that I'm not a politician, I'm an advocate, and I'm looking forward to work, if I get elected, to whoever is on this room to improve our schools and tackle the problems from the roots and impacts our children's life, science from the education in order for them to stay in our town. I'm advocating for new curriculum that creates a new environment in our schools. I want to advocate for transparency and more knowledge for our community, not only what the numbers represent, but what are we spending money on those numbers. I'm advocating for creative finances, bringing money to our development department and looking for creative ways of funding our schools. Looking to work with the community, hosting community forums, just like this debate, and I know other candidates are willing to do that too with me, so we can encourage our community to be more participative in the process that the Board of Education takes. And I'm looking forward for your vote for me and Mirna and Team Green, and whoever you believe in this board is going to work towards improving our school and an educational system in a way that it will transcend our schools, but go out there in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're all very timely. I appreciate that. Now, I offered you the opportunity. The first person who may have a question, I see Jason has his hand up, so it's his question, and everyone at the table is invited to respond to this question with 1 minute, and Jason doesn't get to answer it. So Jason, what's your question?
My question is, over the last 2 years, the Board of Education has not been allowed to approve administrative hires for the district. If elected, would you support having the Board of Ed approve administrative hires as well as a document at every meeting of new hires, so that when we come into meetings and we see people that we don't really recognize who have been hired by our district, that the Board of Ed knows who is coming into our district as hires?
That's a very long question. But I think
But the main one is the administrative.
I think you get the gist. And so, Rebecca, you have your hand up first about the question. You may ask him.
When you say hires, at what level? Do you want the board to be involved with the hiring of paraprofessionals on up to central office administrators? At what level do you see?
Make that real short, please, Jason.
So just real quickly, is that in the majority of districts in Connecticut and the superintendent...
Just answer the question.
No, we should have a front page that said hired on 10/21/17, Rebecca Amani, paraprofessional. Hired here, principal, this one, and then we approve the document, and if we have questions, we go into executive session, and we decide if we want to vote against the document.
So your answer to Rebecca is everybody?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to go in order. I'm going to let you stick your hand up and give us your 2 cents. Okay, Antonella.
I think that the Board of Education definitely should be involved in hiring of administrators, and I would like to see a list that says who has been hired or decisions being made on who they would like to hire, because we haven't seen that yet. We haven't had, like you said, for the last 2 years, the board hasn't been involved in choosing.
All right. Others? Jasmine.
I think knowledge of who we're hiring is a huge part of being on the Board of Education. The Board of Education essentially works directly for the community. So if we know what's going on, then we can communicate that to you guys better, and we can answer the questions that need to be answered. So yes, I am definitely in support of the Board of Education having the ability to be knowledgeable of who's being hired.
I saw some other hands. Jeff?
Sure. Just very quickly, yeah, I do think we should be involved in hiring administrators, certainly. And I think any other, and that would include principals and deans and at school locations, not just central office, but I think being informed about any hires, teachers, paraprofessionals is good. Any information is good information. I don't know.
Manny, I saw your hand.
I think the board should hire the superintendent and hold the superintendent accountable. We have had board members sitting on committees that have hired administrators. I would continue to support that. But you don't want to create a separate structure where then you create an organization where if an administrator is unhappy with what his or her supervisor is saying, they're going to board members and circling back. You don't want to create all kinds of internal issues. The superintendent needs to be held accountable. He or she should have the authority to hold his or her people accountable and move accordingly and be held responsible for doing evaluations properly. So that's my personal belief and professional belief about how it should work.
Are there others? Regina.
This probably doesn't answer the question, but I think it is on the line of transparency. So I would agree that the superintendent should hire the administrators with board approval, not necessarily with the board saying, no, you absolutely cannot hire that person, but maybe we do further research on that person. And I also think that if we move to have 2 board meetings a month, as we did previously, that would improve and increase our ability to be transparent. Thank you.
Kathy.
I do think when Adamowski and the state came in all those years back, part of the issue was some of the micromanaging that perhaps the Board of Ed was doing. So I do want to avoid that at all costs. I want us to be able to hire a superintendent that we can trust and we can be holding him or her accountable and make sure that we are having some transparency. I do want to be involved. I like the idea of the Board of Ed being involved in the search committees. I like the idea of parents being involved in hiring committees. I like the idea of teachers being hired with the hiring committees. So I think if we can kind of structure it like that, and then I do like the idea of the board being aware of how many vacancies there are in teaching positions, because I think that's something that the board should be aware of. But I also think we, the board, should be seeking out that information too. I think we should be, being aware of what's going on in the community also. So,
thank you.
So there.
Others? Myrna.
I do agree that we should be a part of hiring the top administrators through having board members that are on hiring committees. For teachers and everyone else, it's too much. We have a lot of other business to do. I do agree about having a list would be nice so that you're regularly kept up with the transitions in the district. I don't really agree on the superintendent doing it without the knowledge of the rest of the board or not keeping the board abreast to the changes, because it's too long of a term to be able to later on say, well, we're not happy with these changes, so now it's time for you to move on, and now we have to work on all of these fixes that we didn't agree with. And I also need to say that it's a small enough district and community that those changes in personnel are important because we're pretty intimate.
Anyone else? Eric.
I agree with both Myrna and Regina. I think it's really important to be very transparent on the things that we do on hiring levels, and the superintendent should be very transparent with us as a Board of Education to make sure that everything, all the processes are ethical and there's no nepotism or friends hiring friends in our educational system, which we know that happens.
Thank you. Susan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I would definitely support a list of hires, especially when we're going above a certain pay grade. That would be very helpful.
And Rebecca, I believe you did.
I think it's important that the Board of Education be informed. I think it's unrealistic to think that the board is going to have the final word on every hire from a paraprofessional on up. I think that structures exist for reasons, and that you have to have trust in your superintendent and those people who work directly underneath the superintendent to do the search and bring forth the best candidates. But I can't support the Board of Ed being involved in the hires from top all the way down to part-time positions, because that would be all that would ever be dealt with, because there's a lot of turnover in a lot of positions.
Thank you, Karen.
I think I agree with most everybody up here that it would be nice to have the list of the paraprofessionals on up to a certain level. When it gets to administration, that's because Mike did it. Now I lost my train of thought.
Give her a few extra seconds.
Oh, thank you. I really think that the board should at least be made aware of and be involved on some sort of level with the administration in each of the schools as well as the central office. When the community says something's going wrong at the schools, it's the Board of Ed. And if we don't know what's going on, and we don't know who's being hired, but we're getting blamed for it. And you notice I said we, right?
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mike, I'll let you talk. If you talk back a little bit, move the microphone a little bit back.
Whatever you say. I kind of agree with everybody here, but one of the things I really agree with what we need is what Jason had told me weeks ago and Regina had echoed tonight. We need to have 2 meetings a month. There's so much stuff to do. If we even attempted to look at everybody and read every list and do everything, that's what the superintendent does. Should we hire the superintendent? Yes. Should we have a say in who the staff is? Yes. Should we be on more of the committees to find people? Why not us? Why someone else? And the whole situation is there, but we need the 2 meetings a month.
Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken on this who would like to? Well, thank you, Jason, for your question, because I think it really was a very important question to ask, and it was obvious what your answer was, so you didn't need to give it, because obviously you wouldn't have asked it if you didn't believe this was something to do. So with that, I thank all of the panel members. I thank the audience. I want to remind you that if you are not registered, tomorrow night is the last you can register online. So hustle. If you have power. I can't do that at my house.
But you have power tonight.
Yeah, take advantage of Wi-Fi here. And before you go, just remember that these folks want to work for you and your children. But the only way they can do that is if you participate. My favorite League of Women Voters motto is democracy is not a spectator sport. So get busy and play.